I asked you all to shine offline, and I've been shining offline myself. We launched the business about 2.5 years ago, and it was on the back of my own breakdown. I was a self-employed PR marketing consultant, and when my daughter was born, she's now 5.5. When she was born, I had to go back to work really quickly. She was about 4 months old when I had to start to tap back into my job, and quite quickly, the dysfunctional relationship that I had with my phone became very apparent to me, because I would be giving her lunch and checking the inbox, sending a client an email, and pushing her on the swing. And I hit an all-time low, ended up on sleeping tablets. A GP prescribed me for 10 weeks on a sleeping tablet, which I wasn't very happy about. I became a complete insomniac because of the overwhelm and panic that I felt. And I changed GP, and the new GP, who I still go to now, said, come off the sleeping tablets. And I mentioned that I'd meditated in the past. And he said, well, maybe revisit that, because the benefits of mindfulness are comparable to CBT, and there's a lot of research around this. So I started to meditate on a regular basis every day. And that gave me an awful lot of, well, it gave me a break from my phone, which was amazing, but it also gave me some space and pause and clarity in my mind. And then I recognized that the relationship I had with this device and the way that I was using it was causing an awful lot of my stress. So I changed how I used it. It was really hard, but I was determined, and my well-being improved, and I was happier. And people started to recognize that I wasn't Mrs. Stressful in the same way I had been, and asked me what I was doing, and I told them. And when I brought this up in conversation, everybody wanted to talk about it, because everybody seemed to have their own relationship with their device. If it wasn't that they couldn't get away from work in the evening or at the weekends, it was that they were compelled to look at Facebook, but it made them feel crap. Or their wife was on the phone all the time, and it was getting in the way of their relationship. Or they didn't know how to put in boundaries for their kids. So it seemed to be a lot of people were dealing with this issue. And then I had a light bulb moment on a train. One morning I was commuting into London, and I was the only weirdo who wasn't on my phone, and realized that this was a universal thing, that a lot of people were maybe struggling to get some balance and a sense of control in their own lives in relation to their devices. So what we do at Shine Offline is we empower people and businesses to recognize and understand the potentially negative impacts that our connected lives can be having on them. We spoke earlier on about this switched on culture that we all live in, and the fact that we're connected an awful lot of the time, and I shared some stats with you all. But there's one really powerful piece of research that was carried out. Adam Alter is a business psychologist based in New York, and he released a book that came out last year called Irresistible, and it's all about our connected lives and why we're so pulled to our devices. And he shares this graph in his TED Talk, so I wanted to share it with you all today. So this is the average 24-hour working day at 3 points in history. 2007 was the year the smartphone was launched, and then 2015, and then the data from 2017 is from April last year. So the amount of time that we spend sleeping, working and commuting, and on survival, which is all those basic things that we all have to do: eat, wash, look after our children, they've not changed really in the past 10 years or so. This white area is our personal space. It's the sweet spot. It's where you develop your intimate relationships, where you carry out your hobbies, the things that flash before you when you're on your deathbed, the bungee jumps and the beautiful sunsets. And the red is screen time. So the year the smartphone was launched, about half of our personal time was spent in front of a screen. And then in 2015, this had gone up quite a lot. And then in April of last year, findings showed that the vast majority of this personal time was spent in front of a screen. So what that means is the little slither of yellow, that's where our individuality lives, that's where our intimacy lives. Adam Alter says that's where our humanity lives. And I think it's quite striking to see that nothing else has really changed, but that's changed remarkably. So how did we get here? How did we get to the point where in 2016's autumn statement, 42 of the MPs were on their phones during the main address? Well, at Shine Offline, we believe that there are 4 main reasons, and the first one is the staggering speed and the growth of this technology. A baby born 30 years ago was born into a very different world. There was no internet. 1 in 10 houses had a personal computer. At work, you had a physical box, which was a pigeonhole, if anybody remembers, where things were left for you to pick up. And if you were a very innovative company, you had a fax machine. The world was incredibly different. And the mobile phone, or car phone as it was back then, was a symbol of great wealth because it cost about today's equivalent of $10,000. But these days, most of us own a smartphone, we own the device, and we use it to manage our working lives and our personal lives. So it's part of our culture, and it's normal now to be connected all of the time. So that's the growth. The second thing is the lack of guidelines. So I've got Homer here with his junk food because I would draw a parallel with our relationship with food. For a lot of people, that can be quite complex. And many, many years ago, the government recognised that cancers and obesity and heart disease and diabetes, etc., were on the increase, and that there was a lack of education amongst people about healthy diets and physical health. So now it's commonplace. We all know 5 a day, 10 a day, low sugar, low salt. Look after your body. This technology is truly amazing. But at no point has anybody, when handing it to us, said, you might be the sort of person who struggles to get balance and control and set some boundaries for yourself. Easy maybe to set boundaries for your children if you have kids, but maybe not as easy to look at yourself and set some controls for you. Thirdly, this technology is incredibly addictive. And London's first technology clinic was opened 2 years after the smartphone was launched. And we work with a consultant psychiatrist at Shine Offline, Dr. Ian Drever, who reports that he works with executives, senior executives, and he reports that the increase in sleep disorder, anxiety disorder, panic disorder is unbelievable. And he draws a massive correlation between the over-information that we're all having to process all of the time, the fact that our brains haven't evolved and yet we're having to filter and deal with all of this information all the time, and this crisis of mental well-being. Nomophobia is a real phobia, no mobile phone phobia, which is a feeling of stress or anxiety that someone experiences when they can't access their mobile phone. And if you think about it, an awful lot of our online behavior, say social media and gaming, it's based on a reward system. So how many likes you've got, how many views you've got, how many points you've got in your game. So that makes it really difficult to resist. And this technology is honed and tested in Silicon Valley amongst millions of users. And Neil's point on heroin, the only industries that call their consumers users are drugs and tech, which is quite an interesting thought. So this stuff is tested to the point where it's completely irresistible by the time it gets to us. And there's science behind the addictive aspects of our connected lives, and it's all to do with dopamine, which is the hormone that's released whenever something good happens. It's like a little reward from the body. Your brain will spurt a bit of dopamine. Dopamine's released whenever you gamble, smoke, and drink alcohol. And what they found is that dopamine is released whenever we engage in online activity. So that's part of the reason why when you get a text or somebody likes your Facebook post or you get an email, it feels really good. That's a dopamine. And dopamine also has a numbing effect. So that's why for an awful lot of us, whenever we feel overwhelmed or stressed or anxious, we turn to our devices to get that numb from the dopamine. Finally, we're all being seduced. Hopefully, most of you recognize. This is my father's favorite movie, The Graduate. In a world where information is so abundant and our time is so finite, our attention has become the greatest commodity. And whole economies these days are built on getting our attention and converting that attention into cash. When we go online, it's free, but it's not free because it's advertising revenue. And every single website and app that you use, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's The Guardian or a fitness app or a poker game, they've got the same intention to hook you back in, to get you to come back, to get you to spend more time there, because that's how they make their money. And these days, data analytics and algorithms are being used so that what we see on our screens is tailored specifically for us, which makes it even harder to resist and even more seductive. So, what is this doing to us? Well, at Shine Offline, we believe that there are 5 big impacts. And the first one is that a lot of us are feeling increasingly distracted, and that's having an impact on our attention spans and our focus. So Dory's in her inbox here. And in November last year, there was a blog was posted on the Bank of England's website by a strategist called Dan Nixon. And he spoke about a correlation between the growth in sales of smartphones and the decline in the UK economy. And he said there was a crisis of attention, which basically meant that people can't get their heads down. And this is having a direct impact on the ability to do business and make money. Interesting that the Bank of England is writing about this. Secondly, there's a disconnect that a lot of us feel, and this is having an impact on our relationships, both in our personal lives and at work. So email has replaced conversation for years. And these days, the benefit for a lot of us when we start a new job, we're given a smartphone. And it's all shiny and new and amazing. But what that means is that work is asking us to keep going back to the technology, encouraging us to keep going back to the technology. And it's taking away from that verbal, that face-to-face communication. That's the way that we're encouraged to work these days. Whenever we're in meetings, the norm now is to take all your technology in with you. And that's great because it can complement whatever's being spoken about in the meeting. You can refer to something online. But there's also a sense of suspicion, lack of trust. Okay, I've prepared for my 10 minutes in this room today, and he's been on his phone for the past 5 minutes. What is he doing? Is it something to do with what I'm saying? Or is he just on Facebook? Or is he in his inbox? The disconnect that creates and the bad blood that breeds amongst a team. You know, we spend more time at work, those of us at work, than we do anywhere else. And the relationships that we develop in our work are really important to us as individuals, but they're also important for the success of the business. And for a lot of us, this technology can be getting in the way of that. If you think about the times at work where you go to stick the kettle on to have a cup of tea with your colleague to catch up, you know, we all still drink tea. But a lot of people take their smartphones with them everywhere they go. So people will report, oh, yeah, but we're sort of both distracted the whole time. And what does that do to the intimacy of that relationship whenever you're getting pulled away from the person that you're with? And then if you think about your personal life, I'm sure a lot of you here can relate to times in your own lives where you're on the sofa in the evening with your partner, or you're out for dinner with friends. Somebody at a workshop last year said knife, fork, phone is the normal place setting these days. Or you're in the park with your kids, and you're not only sharing the environment with the device, but you're getting pulled away from the people you're with because of it. Deloitte have carried out research that's shown that 1 in 3 of us have argued with our partner about excessive mobile phone usage. And I love the analogy of when you're at a party. I go to kids' parties these days, not the same, but back in the day, and you're chatting to somebody, and you get the sense that someone much more interesting has walked in the back of the room because they're totally looking over your shoulder. Well, the modern day equivalent of that is when you're engaged in conversation with somebody and their phone goes off and they're kind of, and they're with you, but they're not really. And what does that do to that moment? Continuous partial attention is what psychologists are calling it. And it's something that a lot of us can relate to, because if your device is set to notify you, a little bit of you is always in your pocket because you don't know when it's going to go off and what it's going to be. So it's very difficult to focus on the person in front of you. Continuous partial attention. Then there's an overwhelm and an overload, and this is having an impact on a lot of us when it comes to our mental health. This is a 24/7 connected world that we live in. And for a lot of us, from the minute we wake up in the morning until we go to sleep at night, we're connected through our devices. And it's an all-consuming working environment that we work in as well for a lot of us. There's very little cracks in the day for downtime. And work interrupts your personal time more than ever. And work-life balance is a thing of the past. They call it work-life blend now. I don't think that's any better. I believe that the big reason why work-life balance is out the window is because of the technology that we're all carrying around in our pockets and handbags. I remember when you went to work and you left at 5:30 and you went home. You couldn't put the computer in your pocket. But these days, a lot of us carry our work around with us. So it makes it very difficult. We have to discipline ourselves. But the expectation as well is that people are connected and that they can be contacted out of office hours. When you're on holiday, you know, your body might be in Ibiza, but your head can be back in the office. Because for a lot of us now, there's an expectation that we're going to keep checking in. And it's that kind of, God, if I don't keep going into my email, I'm going to have 500 waiting for me when I get back. but also that curiosity factor. Oh, I wonder what's happening with that project while I'm away. And what does that do? Holidays are about getting off the hamster wheel. It's about creating an oasis. It's about slowing down, forgetting about work, and having a proper break. But a lot of us aren't getting the chance to do that anymore because of the technology that we're carrying around with us. The Chartered Institute of Management carried out research a couple of years ago where they found that 80% of managers were spending so much time on their work email out of office hours that they were effectively cancelling out their annual leave. It totaled 29 days. So on the commute, in the evening, on the weekends, on their actual holiday. They weren't getting a break. And if you don't get a break, then you can't be your best self when you're in work. BNP Paribas Bank carried out research in 2015. They put wrist monitors on 500 of their city workers, and they wore them all through the day at work and then into the evening. And they were trying to monitor their heart rates for spikes in stress. And what they found was that the spikes in stress were much greater in the window of the evening than they were the whole day at work. And the conclusion of the study was that was to do with the fear of or the actualization that you would be interrupted by work when you were in your personal time. Do you remember that BBC, the guy on the Skype call and his kids came in the back of the room? You know, we wouldn't take our children to work because that would be a bloody nightmare. And yet a lot of us take our work back home and expect it not to stress us out. But of course it does, because those boundaries are completely blurred. Also, we are stimulated for most of our waking hours because of the constant information that we're trying to process. And being pulled out of that moment of downtime and relaxation is having a massive negative impact on our minds. Fourthly, a lot of us are simply exhausted. As Neil said, I think he mentioned about, a lot of people are using their phones as their alarms. They're in your bedroom. And there's been research for years now about the impact that blue light from the screens has on your melatonin, which we all need to sleep. And there's evidence that obviously that is happening. But at Shine Offline, we believe there's something much bigger happening. And it's to do with overstimulation. So if the last thing you do before you go to sleep at night, because your phone's right beside your head, is check it. What are you doing? Within 5 minutes, you could have your boss, your most stressful client, your ex-boyfriend, a few of your mates, and Donald Trump all standing at the end of the bed because you've been in your work email, you've been in BBC News feed, you've been on social media. So what is that doing to your brain? You're not getting yourself to a place of calm so that you can drift off. You're stimulating yourself. So a lot of us just feel absolutely knackered because we're not getting off to sleep in the same way. And then the fact that the device is beside us, 1 in 3 are checking messages in the middle of the night. So if it's there, the temptation to check it is much stronger. There's a lack of space and pause in a lot of our days. And this is having a negative impact on our ability to be creative and innovative, to tap into that part of ourselves. If you think of your brain like a muscle, as David spoke about earlier on, you can change your brain depending on how you use it, neuroplasticity. These days, what a lot of us do is we train our minds in distraction because we flit on and off our devices all day. So that exercise is the fast-paced reactionary part of the brain. But what's getting neglected is the slow, long-form, contemplative, creative thinking sides of the brain. I don't know who knows this. You may well because of a lot of the press coverage that's been out recently. But Steve Jobs may have given us all the iPad, but he never let his kids have one. And Silicon Valley executives, a lot of them send their children to schools with no Wi-Fi. And the reason is because the innovators and creators of this amazing technology know that if you don't have a good, healthy, sustainable relationship with it, it can be quite toxic. I've got a quote from Steven Spielberg. Technology can be your best friend, or it can be the biggest party pooper of your life. It interrupts our own story, interrupts the ability to have a thought or a daydream, to imagine something truly wonderful, because we're too busy bridging the walk between the cafe to the office on our smartphones. What is the answer? There are 2 camps that people can fall into when it comes to, if you feel that you've got a maybe not the best relationship with how you're using your device, there are a couple of camps that some of you might relate to. So the first one is the demonization camp. This is a nightmare. I can't do this anymore. It's doing my head in. I'm going to have to chuck it away. And that's where the digital detox solution comes into play. But at Shine Offline, we don't think that's the answer. I would, again, draw another analogy with food. So say you're feeling really bloated and you think a juicing weekend in Dorset is just the ticket. So you book yourself and you're away for the weekend and you're on the train home on Sunday night feeling amazing. Skip into work on Monday morning, but stop off at Starbucks for a double chocolate croissant and a cappuccino. You haven't actually dealt with the heart of the problem and the behaviour. So although detox is great and it has its place and it's nice to have a break sometimes, we don't think that digital detox is the answer. And the second camp that people can fall into is the head in the sand, which I think is probably one that more people will fall into. They sort of go with the flow. Well, this is the world we live in, and it's getting faster, and I'm becoming more reliant on it, and I need it for my work and to manage my personal life, and it's just me, and what can I do about it? And at Shine Offline, we have a different approach, and we believe you have to come into contact with your relationship, understand your relationship with your devices, understand where it stresses you out, where it overwhelms you, where it's not enhancing your life and making you feel better. Bring consciousness to it, and effectively, it's about having a more mindful and balanced approach, which is essentially all about removing the autopilot. These days, it's an auto response. Moment of boredom, check the phone. Moment of irritation, check the phone. Just a moment, check the phone. And it's addictive, and manipulative, and seductive, and amazing. So it's become a habit, and we need to break that habit. We need to bring consciousness to our behaviour so we can start making some positive changes for ourselves as individuals. Tools and tips. Anyone ever seen one of these? It's an alarm clock. It's meant to wake you up in the morning. But you need to get your phone out of your bedroom and get yourselves, don't get one of these because they make a horrible noise, but you need to set some consciousness around how your day starts and how your day ends. Who wants Donald Trump, their ex-boyfriend, and their boss in their bedroom at night? Nobody. Well, no. So one of the basic things we say to people is get yourself an alarm clock, create a physical barrier, remove the temptation of checking it. If it doesn't stress you out, then by all means, have your phone beside your bed. But a lot of people will write to us and say, this is all I did and it changed my life. So that's get yourself an alarm clock. And then this is a hooter. This is meant to signify notifications. So you're at work and you're under pressure and you've got loads going on. You're meeting your friend for lunch, but you've got a deadline and you're selling your sofa on eBay and auction ends today. And every time somebody looks at your sofa, your phone goes off. That's really annoying. You can turn off your notifications. You just need to go in and your apps are defaulted to notify you, but we all have the power to go in and change that. We can control the technology much more than we realize. So again, if it's stressing you out and the notifications are pulling you out of the moment and you don't want them to, turn them off. So very quickly, I'm sorry to speed up so much. They're two of our very simple tools and tips. I've got tools and tips to help you shine offline. There's one of these for everybody, and I think we're going to leave them in the exhibition room somewhere, and everybody can take one home. So there are 8 things that we recommend everybody can do. Very, very simple things to help you shine offline. Just to finish, a couple of things to bear in mind. This technology, the relationship that we all have it is very different, and you have to be respectful and mindful of other people's sensitivities. And the example that I really like is if you've had a really busy day at work and you're catching up in the evening and you're firing off a load of emails at 9:30, you don't intend anybody to respond, but they're going into people's inboxes, and then it's like, oh God, am I meant to respond? This is not spoken about, and yet cultures of work, negative working cultures are being created because of that. So do the work in the evening if you need to get yourself back on track, but put it in drafts and auto-send it out in the next morning. Start thinking about the impact your behaviour has on the people around you. This is my favourite slide. This isn't just about kids. This is about the ripple effect of your behaviour. I see it all the time on the train, 2 people commuting together, travelling together, in conversation. One of their phones go off, phone comes out, and then within 30 seconds, the other person's on their phone as well. That moment is broken, and that relationship's being affected. So I get a lot of people say to us, when are you going to start working with the kids? Never mind the kids, the freaking adults need some help. We need to look in the mirror. It's not about the kids. We need to change our own behaviour, bring some consciousness to what we're doing, the impact that we're having on ourselves and on our children, and lead by example. So that's really important. And finally, we're all only human. And this is really, really hard. I work with this every day of my life. It ebbs and flows, and it depends on how stressed I am or how tired I feel. My big one is email. Nightmare. I have an email addiction. I now check my email twice a day, because if I don't, I'll be in it all day. So bring some kindness and compassion to yourself. This is really hard. If you fall off the horse, you've got to get back on again. You fall off the horse, you've got to get back on again. If you're on Facebook at 2 a.m. on the toilet, there's always tomorrow. I'm sorry for speeding up so much at the end there, but I wish you all well. Look at the tools and tips. Hopefully, I've planted some seeds and got you all thinking about it for yourselves. On the website, there's a few different blogs about different things that you can do and how this can impact your life personally. And good luck shining offline.